if there are very specific metrics that you're looking at, like what are they? And then generally speaking, when you're evaluating companies, you're speaking with founders, what are you looking at? What's important? What's not important?
And that's a great question. I think, so when we look at investing into companies, Jordan, I don't think it's very dissimilar to how you would look from an investor. And typically, when we look at the statistics, having met some threshold qualification, at the point of investing into the companies, we know statistically that 1 in 10 companies will fail. And they will fail for these 3 reasons. Number one, they'll run out of cash pretty quickly. That'll be the number one reason. Or they are unsuccessful in fundraising or undercapitalized. So that's a cash issue. Issue number 2 is product market fit. They fail to get product market fit. They might have some early success, maybe the first 100 customers. It's really not true product market fit yet. It's pretty much what I call commercialization. And so that is a journey that they have to endure to basically get to a tipping point where they have repeatability and a flywheel that's really moving at a certain velocity that gives them that product market fit. And the third reason is basically co-founder dynamics and issues. So that for me are top 3 reasons why companies would fail at the point when we're making the investment. And so the idea of metrics is a really powerful tool to be able to change the trajectory of those performance of those companies. And this morning we ran a program with Techstars and Absolutely One on exactly the same issue about how do you change the focus on metrics, or how do you put the right focus on metrics that matter. And so if we can manipulate those levers on the right metrics, I can guarantee you that the failure rate will be far lower, and therefore you see a higher success rate. So to your question about the metric that matters, in a really high-level summary, startups have a tendency to focus on vanity metrics. Metrics that basically look good on paper. For example, monthly recurring revenue, daily active users,
customer
acquisition costs. They're good metrics, and typically investors do ask these metrics at a pitch meeting. What are your MRR? What are your daily active users? Good conversation for investors, but it does nothing to improve the performance of companies. And so those metrics sits on a continuum between lagging and leading indicators. They tend to sit more into lagging indicators. And for me, lagging indicators are the ones that basically are too late in the journey to be able to change the performance. What really founders should be focused on is leading indicators on this side of the spectrum. And those leading indicators will allow you sufficient runway to adjust the lagging indicators, which would be MRR. Say, for example, if conversion rate from, in the context of B2C business, conversion rate from, say, landing on your social media page to your e-commerce site. If we just focus on that, on the conversion rate, and we discover that metric is not performing as well. It could be reasons to the UX, UI experience. It could be basically there could be a friction in the point of navigating through the site. We fix that. You guarantee they have a higher user rate, and you guarantee they have a higher checkout rate, and therefore we monetize it well. We have revenues coming through the other side. But that's really how we can see the interplay between leading and lagging indicators. And so that's really what we're trying to drive at. So our purpose is to focus on leading indicators that drive performance. The other thing that I think a lot of startups tend to focus on are very standard, generic metrics. What I like to focus is more behavioral type metrics.
Yeah.
Metrics that basically, suggest behavior, consumer behavior, that which you can manipulate behavior, you can actually drive the results on this side. And I think last but not least is making the clear distinction between what is value-based metrics, which is basically value captured in business, could be number of customers, number amount of revenue, revenue per customer, for example. But that's not good enough. We're in business for the number one reason of value creation. And it's good to have those numbers. Creating cash is the bottom line of any business. But how do you drive growth? The answer lies in addressing growth metrics. The growth metrics are basically anything that has a ratio, acceleration, a delta, that basically allows you to then monitor the change of those metrics that will then in turn lead to value-based metrics. I think making those distinctions often is not well understood. And so I think what we try to do is really put a lot of emphasis around growth-based metrics, looking at leading and behavioral metrics, so that you can actually change the trajectory of performance of companies overnight. And this is what we try to do.
So I think in summary, I love the 3 T's: team, technology, and traction, right? If you put it really simply, at least from our side, like those are the primary things that we're looking at, particularly like pre-seed and seed stage. Maybe we could talk about like founders, right? Like what do you look for in a founder that you believe is going to take, this company to a plus $1 billion valuation? Like are there any characteristics that really stick out? At least for me, I'll talk about a few stories here in a minute, but like we just love when people are just so obsessed with a problem.
I love to hear your experience as well, but I love the question because I think I often say that I'm more inclined to work with a founder that loves the problem rather than loving the solution.
Yeah.
And so I think, we tend to see a lot of founders very excited about the product, which is cool, but I think having an intimate understanding about the problem set and what they're trying to address, that even turns me on much more. But why so? Because a product and solution can evolve and change over a period of time. But really you become from a certain domain knowledge, expertise, you live through the problem, you've seen the pain points, you have perhaps in a corporate career, you've been exposed to such intensity of data, experiences, that you can say, no one's fixing this. I'm going to be the person to do it, and I know exactly how this is going to be solved. That for me is exciting. But I would also lay with that with something called perseverance and tenacity. We've seen often that founding teams generally split because along the way they're not really have the tenacity to go the extra mile to see it through, because it's really a painful journey. I'm sure everyone's in the room and they relate to this, right? So in spite of having an intimate knowledge about the problem set, and you have the perseverance to see through the difficult changes that's needed to get from point A to point B. And if you think about getting your first client or first POC, being a product market fit, that's a really difficult space. And some people just give it up along the way. So I try to look for, particularly in my interviews with companies, try to understand what have they lived through as a person.
Yeah.
More about the experiential journey rather than what's on the resume, rather than what's on the product that they're building. I in fact don't get the product demo, I'm not interested in that. I really want to know what the founders have lived through in life to be able to appreciate that these guys can really take it forward. Yeah. That for me, for pre-seed stage, is the important ingredient.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I mean, if you look at some success stories of founders or even some VCs in Silicon Valley, like eating ramen noodles for 24 months is normal, right? And like really roughing it and really trying to build out, the product or, raising that round. One thing I always like to emphasize for our founders in the portfolio companies we're speaking or working with is like the focus on yourself and your well-being and your health, right? Like you guys are putting in crazy hours. I know I'm working really hard all the time, but founders typically work 17-hour days, maybe more, hopefully. But I think focusing on your health is really important. I'm not sure if you have any advice. Like, do you have any advice for the founders in the room?
I think you brought about a very important topic, which is this.
It's burnout.
It's burnout, it's broad topic, mental wellness. You should know that if you're an entrepreneur, you represent 1% of the population, probably represent 80% of wellness, mental wellness issues. I did a study once when I was the CEO of the Entrepreneurs Organization, when I was based out of Washington, DC, and we see a high percentage of people need clinical support just because of burnout. Their work-life balance is not balanced. There's also a high risk of suicides. Sorry to bring this up, but it's a fact of life as an entrepreneur. And so I think the importance of self-care and self-love is now openly spoken about, but that should not be something you should be afraid to speak openly. And I think when I think about investing in companies, I ask myself, what is the assets that we invest in? Right? I forget about the IPs, forget about customers, there aren't many, but really the assets are the two individuals, the two co-founders. And so the assets are not looked after in terms of, think of physical buildings, it's not well maintained, it's not well cleansed, and so on, what have you. It's no different. And so having the founders well maintained and well oiled and well cleansed from every point of view, physically, mentally, and spiritually, is the fundamental key success factor to sustain long-term growth. It's easy to work 20 hours a day in short bursts, but you can't live off that as a marathon, really short sprints. So you have to think about a way that you find your own balance in terms of hours you're working, what's the best time, what's the best routine, so that you don't fall off the rails. And I think that's really important.
I know that was a curveball, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot the past 6 months. Like, what can we do more of for the portfolio or the companies we're working with to be healthy, take care of themselves, embody their families when they're working so hard. It's definitely something I would love to be talked about more and more in our.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your beautiful insights. And so my question is about culture. At which stage of startup life cycle founders need to focus on culture aspects, how to make them impact these key performance indicators efficiently?
I love the question. At which stage should culture play a role in the startup journey? Day -1.
100%.
What would be your
-1, which means even before you come up with an idea, either you have it or you don't have it as in your DNA. Because the founder, be one or two guys, should really have it in the DNA as a culture, right? You don't come and say, I'm going to build this product and let me design a culture over the product. It doesn't really happen that way, I think. Right? I think you just basically intuitively hire people and you behave in a certain way that's coming from your own DNA. And you're the seed for that culture. Of course, it takes shape and form, it gets a bit more refined as the company grows, and the culture does evolve over a period of time. But we're talking about a really early stage pre-seed company. It's -1, day -1 for me. So, and so I think, when you take your first step as the entrepreneur, you actually intuitively and unintentionally are going to create a culture because of who you are. That would be my response.
And small remark. So, and as far as this shape, how to propagate, how to deliver these messages to every single person in your company, and align somehow with these beautiful KPI almost indicators, which we may have like 50 or how much?
I think you're leading by example, right? Like the founder, your job is to set the tempo and take the business forward. So if your actions, are speaking for the company, you don't need to be sending emails to your 50 employees individually. Hey, you're doing a good job. Hey, you need to pick it up. Like you just need to lead by example, and all of your actions, they should see those and say, I'm going to follow that tempo. Like we're looking, at least me, like I love hungry founders that are just hungry. And they're going to close that deal, they're going to raise that money, they're going to expand to the next market. It's just a mindset, and everybody needs to follow it, right? It's like a trickle down. I think, like you said, from day -1, it's got to start and just setting the tempo.
Thank you.
And you think about, we spoke about North Star metrics. We set a very compelling vision. You're going to have, say, 1 million customers. What's your business?
Large language models, artificial intelligence, generative AI.
Generative AI, okay. And what are you solving?
What?
What are you solving?
Right now, I'm mostly consulting people who are solving some problems. It's like multiple. I'm not focused on one single idea. So I'm working with tech startups, I'm working with augmented reality, and some logistics.
So my advice to you is to be single-minded in terms of what you're solving in the marketplace. That will lead you to set a North Star metric, what you want to solve. And that could be an inspiring number for you and your team to excel in pursuit of that goal.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful session. It was very, very inspiring as a founder to hear what to do and how to solve challenges. According to the culture, I really love to hear that because I'm trying personally to bring that into my company. And sometimes, just some off top, it's really hard when you bring in a person that doesn't fit your culture to tell them, it's a startup, it's not a corporation. Let's act as a startup, and that people are leaving a company. And first I was really caring about that, thinking, I'm like a bad boss, I cannot keep people inside of the team. And then I understood that those people who are same-minded, they just join in and they don't care. Is it a startup or whatever? They like the idea, they like the hustle, and they're just hustling all day, all night, like whatever, each time they are available. And maybe it's kind of thing that founders should propagate, maybe inside of the team, between those who are ready to hustle, that this is the only way sometimes, not act as an old company, but act as a real startup that can change the world. But my question was, and maybe someone else found that a little bit interesting, do you guys compete for the startups here in the region? I mean, Plug and Play and Techstars.
Good question.
We have a lot of portfolio companies together. There's a company called Axel, which we invested in, I think in 2019 or 2018, but before we met them, they went through Techstars. I would say we're definitely open. I mean, maybe you have another opinion, but I'm open to support your companies. And I think the beauty of like the Middle East and the beauty of working together, sitting in the same room, sitting in chairs next to each other, being on a fireside chat together, is like the message we want to send is that we're like open to support companies. When they go through Techstars and they're ready to meet our corporate partners or our government partners, we're totally game. And it doesn't matter where they come from. Our value proposition is to put the best companies in front of our partners, whether that be for investment or proof of concepts or partnerships. So it doesn't matter. I don't think we're competing. I think
Totally.
we want to enable.
So I think the way to think about it is basically each of us that operates in the space are provided a capital, access to a network, access to a program. You could actually argue that you could use 2 or 3 or 4 names in the same industry simultaneously or sequentially to achieve the goal. Frankly, we don't care. In the sense, you can, if that makes you happy or you succeed because of that, well and good. And if you think about the number of startups that are churning out every day, it's just incredible. How much can we consume individually is not possible. Because it's a people business, right? So you really have to go and meet people and get to know them. And it's really hard to, I guess, have one dominant person or, player in the market to basically address everything. You need multiple players in the industry to make up a strong and robust ecosystem, right? So the more we have the place like Techstars, Plug and Play, and others, it really elevates the game for founders because you have optionality, you've got multiple choices, sometimes you can combine those two for your own benefit. So we never think of it as competitive, we collaborate a lot, and sometimes we know that founder's journey is different for each one, so sometimes they need to go through 2 programs to get to a point where they're self-sufficient. Sometimes they're adequate with one program. And so we're constantly sourcing that from each other or getting investments from one another. That's how we view it as an operator.
And many times it's beneficial for the startup to work with both of us, right? Like we have 800 partners around the globe and they have probably 1,000 in different markets, and many times, the corporations or the governments will work with one of us, not both of us. So it definitely makes sense for the startups to work with Techstars and Plug and Play.